bringing you a very a sort of a special guest right now, and you have heard about this family if you've been watching Donald Trump. Trump recently had a rally out in Arizona, and on stage he was joined by family members who had lost loved ones who had been killed by illegal immigrants. And this is a local Massachusetts family, and I'm looking at a Boston Globe article in front of me right now, and I'm going to read you a little bit just so our WMEX listeners know exactly what we're talking about. This article is actually from August of 2011. Okay, so about 5 years ago, Maureen Maloney said her son was probably trying to make it home before dark on Friday night. Matthew Denise, 23, got as far as Congress and Fayette Street about 10 minutes of 8 on that Friday night before he was struck by a pickup truck and became entangled in its wheel, according to this Globe article, and dragged about a quarter of a mile to his death by the driver who did not stop. Police say Nicholas Gauman, 34, an illegal immigrant from Ecuador who had his 4-year-old with him in the truck, was drunk and ran a stop sign and hit Denise's motorcycle. They say Gunman continued to drive, weaving through the streets while dragging Matthew Denise underneath. This type of tragedy is one of the things that Trump has been highlighting in his campaign, saying that what happens sometimes when you let people into this country, it can happen on either side of the fence, but when you have an illegal immigrant behind the wheel, it just compounds a terrible tragedy like this. Joining me now live on the phone is the mother of Matthew Denise. That is Maureen Maloney. Maureen, welcome to the Shortsleeve Report.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yes, first of all, I'd like to say sorry for your loss. It's a terrible thing that you've been through.
Thank you.
Tell us, I read a little bit from this Globe article from 2011, but why don't you tell our WMEX listeners what happened that night?
Well, pretty much what you had read. Matthew was on his way home, and it was not yet dark, and he was only 2 miles from home when Nicholas Gauman ran a stop sign, and his truck collided with Matthew's motorcycle. What we know now is Matthew survived that initial impact. Witnesses saw him trying to get up out of the road, and the experts testified at the trial that Matthew would have survived that with scrapes and abrasions. But when Gauman fled, he ran over Matthew, and Matthew got caught in the wheel well and was dragged to his death. So Matthew's death was totally preventable.
And what happened to Nicholas Gauman?
So after 3 years of being dragged through the court system, we finally went to trial. He was sentenced to 12 to 14 years in jail. He appealed that conviction. That appeal was just denied last month, and I just found out yesterday that Nicholas Gauman is now appealing the appellate court decision. So he just continues to use and abuse our court system to try to escape jail time.
Did he ever express remorse?
Never. Mm-hmm. Never looked at anyone in the family, never said a word in court. No, never expressed any remorse at all.
Okay. So tell us, how did the Trump campaign reach out to you? How did you hear from the Trump campaign? And why did you agree to be part of their event?
Donald Trump has been reaching out to families that have been victims of illegal alien murders since he announced he was running for presidency. So I originally met him a year ago, but for his Phoenix event, I belong to the Remembrance Project. So the Remembrance Project reached out to me and asked if I was interested in attending and speaking at the pre-rally event, which I agreed to. Then when we attended the rally, after we went up on stage initially, which was televised, Donald Trump showed up and wanted to meet with us all backstage. And then he said he was mentioning us in his speech, and would we be willing to go up on stage?
And you agreed to do that?
Yes.
Yep. And tell us, go ahead.
My goal here, of course, it's great that Donald Trump has taken this issue on as something that he's promoting. But my goal is to keep Americans safe. I mean, thousands of people are killed each year by illegal aliens, and all these deaths are preventable because these people should not be in our country. And if our government did their job and enforced our current laws, Matthew would still be alive, and thousands of other people would still be alive.
Yes, exactly to your point. What do we know about Nicholas Guaman and how he got in the country and how long he was here?
He had been here since early 2000s. He came in through New York on a cargo ship. Nicholas Guaman has a second-grade education. We lost a year of time in court because his attorney was saying he spoke Quechua, which is an Ecuadorian language. It was very difficult to find translators that spoke that language. And lo and behold, on the day that we were starting the trial, the judge happened to speak fluent Spanish, and he realized the interpreter was speaking in Spanish and not Quechua. So Nicholas Guaman did speak fluent Spanish, but this was just a ruse, to get a Quechua interpreter to try to try to delay the trial.
Mm-hmm. Now, what do we know about it? Who was employing him? Who gave him a job? How did he survive here?
He worked doing roofing work. I don't know who employed him. His wife worked at a restaurant at the time in Mendon. His other family members here, they're all working. They're surviving. He also had Mass Health, which I have not been able to find out how Nicholas Guaman was entitled to Mass Health, but he was on Mass Health. He's receiving state-funded benefits for his child that was born here. He's a son that was born here, so he's considered an American citizen. So he was surviving quite well.
Mm-hmm. And he is in prison here, you said again, for how long?
Well, 12 to 14 years, but what I've since found out is that about 30% of the sentence is taken off for good behavior. And pretty much you have to, kill an inmate or attack a guard to be considered bad behavior. So he will probably only serve 8 to 9 years of that sentence. He's already been in jail for 5 years, so he's probably getting out in another 3 to 4 years. And he will be released into the community, and there's no doubt in my mind he will get behind the wheel of the truck and drive again.
So once he completes his sentence, he isn't deported?
He is supposed to be deported, but Obama has tied the hands of ICE, and they're only allowed to detain illegal aliens for a certain amount of time, and when that time runs out, they are released into the streets, yes. Mm-hmm.
So, go ahead.
You probably saw the headlines a couple months ago, where tens of thousands of violent criminals have been released by the Obama administration into our streets.
For our WMAX listeners who are just joining us now, we're talking with Maureen Maloney. Her son, Matthew Denise, was killed by a drunk driver, an illegal immigrant from Ecuador. He is currently in prison. And we reached out to her after we obviously I followed your case personally myself as a reporter at WBZ TV for many years, and we do appreciate you talking to us today. But I guess, so what is your feeling about we know how Donald Trump has articulated what is wrong with our immigration system today. As somebody who's been personally touched by such a tragic loss at this point, what are your feelings about our system?
I agree with Donald Trump. We have the laws on the books. If we just let law enforcement and ICE do their jobs, more than half of these illegal aliens would be deported in no time. We also have to crack down on employers who provide jobs. The United States is a magnet to other countries. We roll out the red carpet to allow them to come in and provide them work and provide them with benefits. If we take those things away, there's no reason for them to stay here. They prefer to go back to their own families. They're only here for the money.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of the other families that you met I think you've met other families before, but in terms of the families that you interacted with at the Arizona event, tell us about that. The
other families feel very similar to how I feel. all these deaths were preventable. Many of these illegal aliens that have killed our loved ones have come in contact with law enforcement previous to this. All these deaths were preventable. This is just, a horrible tragedy that's occurring in our country. None of us ever expected it to happen to us, but unfortunately it has. And it, has opened our eyes to everything that is wrong with our judicial system and in our government.
Now, did Guaman have any run-ins with the law prior to striking and killing your son?
He did. In Massachusetts, he had 3 assault and battery charges, breaking and entering with felony intent. And with each of those charges, they were dismissed.
Well, at the point he's arrested and charged, they must know he's an illegal immigrant. Correct?
They do. So,
and they do nothing.
They can only hold them for a certain amount of time, and then if ICE is not notified within that time frame and comes and picks them up, they're let go on bail. Obama has really tied the hands of local law enforcement.
How ludicrous is that? I mean, it's just...
It is. It totally is. A little bit prior to when Matthew was killed, so like prior to 2011, we had secure communities here in Massachusetts, which would have allowed local law enforcement to contact ICE quicker. And then Governor Patrick rescinded the order, and it tied the hands of local law enforcement. So when Guaman, assaulted a police officer in 2008, 2009, whatever it was, ICE was not notified.
Right. So if it had been notified, he would have been gone, and chances are your son would be alive today.
Right. And I heard that he had a criminal record in New York also, but I was not able to obtain those records.
Well, if your family situation isn't an articulate example of what is wrong with our system, I don't know what is. One final question here about your interaction with Donald Trump. Did you get a chance to speak to him one-on-one? And if you did, what did you take away?
I have had the opportunity to speak to him one-on-one, not only at this event, but also last year. I find him to be very sincere. And last August, when I met with him at the Ernie Bach Summer Bash, Trump kept our meeting privately. He met with me and 2 other families, and he gained an enormous amount of respect from me at that point because he could have used that meeting to his benefit, and he didn't. And he's been traveling around the country meeting with other families. I'm in communication with families from all over the country, and he's been meeting with families along with, vets throughout the country, and he never publicizes any of this. He's doing us a great service by highlighting this issue of illegal aliens killing Americans.
Maureen Maloney, thank you very much for joining us today on the Shortsleeve Report. And again, we are sorry for the loss of your son.